Today, we're taking a look at the most famous food from Scotland. Would you ever taste haggis? Hi there, everyone. I'm Jeff, and this is Plain English, where JR and I help you upgrade your English with stories about current events and trending topics. We have turned the page on a new month. We are now in November, and I've got a theme for you for the month of November, and that theme is going to be food. So today's story is about the most famous, some would say infamous, recipe in Scotland, which is called haggis. Later in the month, we'll do a couple more episodes about food too, but that's for later. In the second half of today's episode, I'll show you how to use the expression out of reach. This is a really good one, really important one. Out of reach is the expression you'll learn today. This is episode number 725. So that means JR has uploaded the full transcript, quiz, exercises, and more to plainenglish.com/725. Before we start today's story, I'd just like to remind you that the podcast is just one part of how we can help you upgrade your English skills. At plainenglish.com, you can make faster progress with active learning strategies. You can take quizzes, do activities, listen to the fast version of the audio, watch video workshops, practice what you learn, and even join a live call with JR and me. It's all about helping you build your skills to become a better, more confident English speaker. Sound good? Go to plainenglish.com to start your free 14-day trial today. Now, let's jump into today's story. The most famous food from Scotland is haggis. But if you haven't had it, don't worry, there's probably a good reason. First, the traditional recipe is banned in many places, including the United States. Second, haggis includes parts of the animal that we don't typically eat. Still, Scots proudly hang on to their local recipe, and they even have a traditional night to eat it, January 25th, after a Scottish poet who made the dish famous. If you're not in Scotland on January 25th, you can still order it on other days of the year. What is it? Traditional haggis is made of the liver, stomach, tongue, heart, and sometimes lungs of sheep or cows. It's mixed with spices, onion, oatmeal, and animal fat, all before being boiled inside the lining of a sheep's stomach. Hungry yet? The good news about haggis is that you don't have to follow the traditional recipe. Haggis today can be a little different. For example, haggis can be prepared without the lungs. That's what's banned in the United States. No lungs can be used in any food product in the US or Canada. Even some Scottish recipes omit the lungs today. Haggis is one of those anything goes types of recipes. To make good haggis, you don't need to follow strict proportions. As one butcher says, I use whatever guts I have on hand. And the lining of a sheep's stomach is not always available. So haggis can be cooked in sausage casing or just baked in a pan. Haggis has a very earthy, meaty flavor. The high fat content makes it a savory dish. The combination of liver and oats produces a nutty flavor and aroma. The meat is ground and mixed together, so you don't taste the individual parts. Haggis has a soft, moist texture. During the cooking process, the oatmeal soaks up the fat. If you've tasted meatloaf in the United States, it's kind of like that, but softer. Haggis is typically served with turnips and potatoes, or, as the Scottish say, with neeps and tatties. Most people's reaction to haggis is yuck. Most Western diets no longer include internal organs like the liver and heart. But the haggis recipe dates back hundreds of years to a time when no part of an animal could be wasted. Even today, many Scots say that haggis is an affordable way to serve a protein-packed meal to the family. For most people, the yuck factor is less from the taste than from picturing the ingredients and the strange cooking process. But if you're an adventurous eater, or if you can just not think about the ingredients, then you might like it. Besides, the liver and heart are full of vitamins and nutrients. The celebrity chef Anthony Bourdain loved haggis. He called it one of life's great pleasures. If you want to enjoy this great pleasure, you have a few options. Your best bet is to go to Scotland. They have it available at the pubs. You can get it prepared in England too. And if you're in the UK, you can order it online. It comes in the sausage casing, so all you have to do is cook it. Outside the UK is more complicated. The traditional recipe with the lungs can't be shipped across international borders. In the EU, the United States, and Canada, you may be able to find imported haggis with a special international recipe that excludes the sheep's lungs. If you look hard enough, you may be able to find locally prepared haggis at specialty butcher shops, grocery stores, Celtic festivals, and possibly in restaurants. I did a quick search for haggis availability outside Scotland, and here's a sample of what I found. A butcher shop in the Chicago suburbs makes its own haggis. A Celtic festival in Pennsylvania has a haggis eating competition. British grocery stores in Canada have imported haggis in sausage casings for you to boil at home. And Amazon sells it in cans. If you do decide to have haggis, you might want to wash it down with an ice-cold iron brew. That's the national soda of Scotland. It's bright orange and has a sweet, tangy flavor. Yeah, I'm going to say no thanks to that haggis eating competition. I've been to Scotland just once for about a week when I was a student, and I had haggis. I don't remember it tasting bad. It just tasted strange. At the pubs there, you can either get it as a full meal or as a side dish. I had it as a side. Anyway, it was not as bad as I was expecting, but I would not have wanted the full meal portion. Out of reach. Out of reach is an expression we use when something is inaccessible or unattainable. This can mean something you can't afford, like an expensive car or luxury vacation, or it can refer to a goal or dream that feels impossible to achieve. When you think about this expression, I want you to think about yourself reaching your arm forward and trying to grab something, but it's just a little bit too far away. It's out of reach. So metaphorically speaking, if something is out of reach, it's beyond your ability to obtain. You can't get it, at least for now. The most common way and the easiest way to use out of reach is to describe things that are too expensive for someone to afford. You would typically use this for something close to what you could afford, but not quite attainable. The US is a land of car owners. Most people can afford a vehicle of some kind. You kind of need one, but not everyone can afford a new car. For some people, a new car is out of reach. They just can't pay the price of a new car, so they buy used cars, which are usually a much better value. So pay attention here. If a new car is out of reach, it means the person can't quite afford a new car, but they can get some kind of vehicle. It's not unreasonable to think they might buy a new car, but it's just out of reach. It's just a little too expensive for what they can afford. Parents might also use this phrase when talking about their children's education. For example, a parent might say, enrolling our kids in a private school is out of reach for us. That means the tuition fees are too high for the family to afford. A private school might be $10,000 or $15,000 per year per kid. That's out of reach for most families, especially since they pay taxes that pay for the local public schools. So if something is very difficult to afford, you can say far out of reach. Here's another example. Buying a home in New York City is far out of reach for most young people these days. A one-bedroom apartment in Manhattan sells for, on average, $800,000, almost $1 million for a one-bedroom apartment. For people making a middle-class salary, that is far out of reach. But be careful with this. It has to be somewhat realistic. A trip to space on a Blue Origin spacecraft costs $450,000 for a 90-minute ride. You would not use out of reach with this because it's just so far above what any normal person could pay. You want to use out of reach for something that a person could realistically hope for. Now, out of reach can also describe goals, dreams, or aspirations that feel impossible to achieve, even when money isn't the issue. There are a lot of talented athletes at universities. In the US, football and basketball are popular at the university level and very competitive. The big programs play on television, they play in packed arenas, and the best players move on to the professional leagues. But getting drafted into a professional football or basketball league is out of reach for many good, talented players at the university level. There are too few spots available in the pro leagues. The very best players from a team might get drafted, But for most players you see on a college roster, even the ones playing on TV, a professional league is out of reach. It's not a question of money. It's a question of talent and a hard question of numbers. For most people who play at the college level, a pro career is out of reach. Another example of an unattainable goal is something you just don't have time for. How about this? Imagine a young parent has always dreamed of getting an advanced degree. But that person might say, earning an advanced degree while working full-time and raising a family is out of reach for me. Now, in this case, it's not about the tuition. It's not about the financial cost of the program. It's about the time it would take to do it. And the person might just not have the time to devote to such a demanding goal like law school or a PhD program. Juggling full-time work and family responsibilities is hard enough. Getting an advanced degree on top of that is, for many people, out of reach. Some people do it. I don't know how, but some people do it. But I would say for most people, being a parent and working is more than enough. Getting an advanced degree on top of that is just out of reach. It's not a goal that most people in that situation can achieve. So just as we wrap up here, I do want to emphasize that the most common way to use out of reach is financial. We use it to describe something that is unaffordable. And that wraps us up here at Plain English. This was episode number 725, which means JR has uploaded the full transcript, exercises, and practice opportunities to plainenglish.com/725. We'll be back on Monday with a new topic. I've got 2 more this month about food. Maybe we'll do 3. Let's see how it goes. But Monday, we're back with a new current events topic. See you then. Listen up. If you speak Spanish, Portuguese, Chinese, German, French, Italian, Japanese, Polish, or Turkish. One of the most frustrating things about listening and reading in a second language is being confused by unfamiliar words or phrases. When you listen to Plain English, or when you read the transcript, you probably encounter some words you don't know. When that happens, you have a few options. You can stop the audio, go look up the definition, then return to the episode, find your place, and press play again, but that's exhausting. Or you can just skip it and be confused. That's no fun either. But what if you could see the translation of the word into your language instantly without having to stop the audio, without having to look anything up? Well, you can at plainenglish.com. For each episode, we translate about 100 words and phrases from English to 9 languages: Spanish, Portuguese, Chinese, German, French, Italian, Japanese, Polish, and Turkish. And we highlight those words in blue. All you have to do is hover your mouse over the highlighted word and you'll see the translation instantly. It works great on mobile too. It really makes listening a lot more satisfying, and it's a great way to expand your vocabulary in English. The best way to see these translations is to sign up for a free 14-day trial at plainenglish.com. During your trial, you can read as many transcripts as you like, all with the translations into your language. So sign up for your free trial today at plainenglish.com.